I was standing in the parking lot of my own graduation ceremony, still in my cap and gown, watching my mother fix my brother's collar instead of looking at me. That was the moment I knew. Not the first time I'd known, but the moment I stopped pretending I didn't. My brother Caden had just finished his first semester of community college. Passing grades, nothing remarkable, but my parents had driven 3 hours to celebrate him that weekend. The same weekend I was receiving my master's degree in nursing administration, summa cum laude, after 2.5 years of night classes while working 40 hours a week at Mercy Regional. They hadn't forgotten. That's the part that took me the longest to accept. They knew. They just chose differently. My name is not important right now. What matters is that I was 31 years old, standing in a parking lot in a polyester gown that itched at the collar, holding a diploma I'd nearly destroyed my health to earn. And the two people who were supposed to be proudest of me were straightening my brother's jacket for a photo that had nothing to do with me. You understand, my mother had said on the phone 2 weeks before. Caden's been struggling. He really needs us there for his little ceremony. We can celebrate your thing another time. My thing. 7 years of nursing. A master's degree. A promotion to clinical education coordinator that I hadn't even announced yet because I'd been saving it for graduation day. My thing. I said okay. I always said okay. That's the part about being the responsible one that nobody tells you about. After a while, they stop asking if you're okay with things. They just assume you will be because you always have been. I've been making myself okay with things since I was 15, when my parents used my babysitting savings to cover Caden's hockey fees and told me they'd pay me back when things got better. Things never got better, or rather, they got better and then that money got used for something else, and eventually we all just stopped talking about it. I learned to keep my money in a separate account. I learned to stop mentioning things I was saving for. By the time I was in my late 20s, I had a rhythm. I paid my own bills. I helped with theirs when they called, and they called more than I'd like to admit. The water heater one winter, car registration fees more than once, a security deposit when they downsized after my dad's hours got cut. I didn't resent the helping. I resented that it was always invisible. My brother would visit and my mother would cook his favorites, and they'd all sit together and watch whatever game was on. I'd visit and she'd ask me if I could take a look at a problem with her insurance portal since you work in healthcare. Every single time. I became the family IT department, accountant, and emotional support line. Caden became the one they worried about, the one they circled around and protected like something fragile. To be fair, he was going through things, but so was I, and somehow that was never the same kind of concern. I don't want to make him the villain. He's not a bad person. He's just spent 34 years being told he was the one who needed looking after, and people tend to become what you tell them they are. The villain, if there is one, is the pattern, and the people who chose to keep it going long past the point where it made any sense. So, graduation day, parking lot, my mother's hands on my brother's jacket. My father took the photo. Caden smiled. My mother looked proud in a way I hadn't seen her look at me in years. I took my own photo later, alone, with a stranger I asked outside the building. She was kind about it. She asked if I wanted her to take a few so I had options. I said yes, thank you, and I meant it more than she knew. 3 months after graduation, I got the formal offer letter for a position I'd been quietly working toward for over a year, Director of Clinical Education at a regional hospital network 2 states away. Better salary. Better title. Housing stipend for the first year while I found a place. It was the kind of news you want to share with someone immediately. That buzzing thing in your chest when something real finally lands. I called my aunt first. My dad's older sister. The one who'd sent me $50 every birthday without fail and called to actually ask how my program was going. She cried a little. The good kind. Then I called my parents. My mother's response was, 2 states? That's so far. Who's going to help us with things? Not congratulations. Not even a pause to take it in. Just that. My father got on the line and said he was proud, and I believe he meant it. But then he also said maybe I should think carefully because moving that far was a big decision, and what if something happened and I wasn't nearby? I was 31 years old. I had a master's degree and a director-level job offer. What I heard was, what about us? I told them I was taking it. I'd give my current position 6 weeks' notice. I'd start the move in the fall. I kept my voice even. I was very practiced at keeping my voice even. What I didn't tell them was the other thing. The thing I'd found out 4 months before graduation, when I'd gone over to help my mother set up a new laptop and had accidentally opened a financial summary tab she'd left up on the browser. I wasn't trying to snoop. I closed it quickly, but I'd seen enough. My parents had a home equity line they'd opened years ago. I knew that much. What I hadn't known was how much they'd drawn against it, or that a significant portion, and I mean significant, enough to make my stomach drop, had gone to Caden over the past several years. Not loans, disbursements. No paperwork, no repayment schedule. Just transfers with notes like help with rent and car situation and once, memorably, Caden Europe. My brother had gone to Europe. I had eaten rice and whatever was on sale at the grocery store for the better part of a semester to avoid touching my loan money, and my brother had gone to Europe on a home equity line that was now sitting at a balance that would take my parents well into their 70s to clear if they only made minimum payments. I sat with that for 4 months. I didn't say anything. I paid for my own graduation tickets and drove myself there and watched my mother fix his collar in the parking lot. But I didn't forget. The move happened in September. My aunt helped me pack. She drove down with her minivan and we spent 2 days in my apartment wrapping dishes in newspaper and carrying boxes, and she made me laugh more than I had in months. "You know," she said at one point, taping up a box of books, "your grandmother used to say there are people who carry the family and people who are carried." She was always very clear about which one she was. I asked which one she thought I was. She looked at me over her reading glasses. "I think you've been carrying long enough." I moved on a Thursday. My parents did not come. My mother said her back was bad, which it sometimes was, and my father said he couldn't take the time off work, which may have been true. My brother didn't offer, but I hadn't expected him to. My aunt and I unloaded the moving truck ourselves. She's 62 and stronger than most people I know. By the time we ordered pizza and sat on my bare floor surrounded by boxes, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Still. That's the word. I felt still. No one was going to call me that night to ask me to fix their Wi-Fi or walk them through a billing dispute or talk them down from something my brother had done again. No one was going to say my name in that particular tired, heavy way that meant a favor was coming. I was just a person in an empty apartment eating pizza on the floor at the beginning of something. The call came 11 days after I arrived. My mother. Voice stretched thin. Caden had lost his job. He'd been living in an apartment that was apparently month to month, and the building had sold, and he had 30 days to find somewhere else. Did I have any room? I had a 1-bedroom, 700 square feet, in a city I'd just moved to and was still learning. I had a new job that started in 4 days. I had, for the first time in my adult life, a space that was entirely my own. I said no. She said, "I thought you'd want to help your family." I said, "I do want to help my family. But I just moved. I need time to settle." She said, "He's your brother." I said, "I know who he is." There was a long pause. Then she said, "You've become very selfish since you moved." I'd been there 11 days. 11 days of being selfish, apparently. I said I had to go and that I loved her, and I hung up the phone and sat very still in my small apartment in my new city and thought about the word selfish. I thought about what it means to be called selfish by the person who used the phrase "my thing" to describe your graduate degree. I thought about the home equity line, about Europe, about $50 birthday checks from an aunt because your own parents never quite had it together, but somehow there was always something for him. I thought about all the times I'd said okay. Then I called my aunt and told her what had happened, and she said, "Good. You said no, good." And that was that. Caden found somewhere to stay. I don't know the details because my mother didn't share them, which I took to mean she didn't want me to know they'd helped him again. The calls became shorter. My mother was cordial in a pointed way, which meant she was waiting for me to apologize for moving and for saying no and for existing at a distance she found inconvenient. I didn't apologize. That was new for me. I was 6 weeks into my new job when my aunt called, and this time her voice was different. "I need to tell you something," she said, "and I want you to hear it from me, not from your parents." She'd been at a family thing, my cousin's daughter's birthday, low-key, backyard, and my parents had been there, and apparently my brother had been there too with his new girlfriend, And at some point, the conversation had turned to me, the way conversations apparently did when I wasn't around. My mother had told people, relatives, some of whom I barely saw, some I was genuinely close to, that I'd moved away to get away from the family, that I'd become distant and difficult, that she didn't know what she'd done to deserve it, that she worried about my brother because at least he was close by and she knew he was okay. But with me, she just didn't know. My aunt had sat with this for 2 days before calling me. She wanted to be sure before she said anything. She's rewriting it, my aunt said. I've watched her do it my whole life with your father's family too. The story becomes whatever makes her the one who was hurt. I didn't say anything for a moment. Is there anything that's actually true in what she said? I asked. My aunt thought about it. You did move away. Okay, everything else she made up. I thanked her. I said I needed to think. What I thought about, alone in my apartment that night, was whether I wanted to fight it, whether I wanted to call the relatives and explain myself and present a counter-narrative and spend energy I didn't have on a story that most people probably half believed and would forget in 6 months anyway. I decided I didn't. What I did instead was write a letter. Not a letter I sent, not at first. Just a document on my laptop, honest, detailed, the whole thing laid out. The graduation, the parking lot, the laptop screen I'd accidentally seen, the Europe trip, the years of being the one who handled things, the phone call 11 days in, all of it. I wrote it for myself to see if it looked true outside of my own head. It did. The situation with my parents shifted in February, the way things do when you're no longer willing to maintain a fiction. My father called me, which was unusual. He usually let my mother make the calls and then got on the line to add 3 sentences of support before handing it back. But he called alone on a Tuesday evening, and his voice had that particular quality I remembered from my childhood. When something had actually gotten through to him, he said he wanted to talk. He said he thought maybe some things had gotten out of hand. I said okay. He said he knew my mother had been saying things to people. He didn't defend it, which surprised me. He just said he knew and that he didn't think it was right and that he was sorry. He didn't say sorry for the graduation. He didn't say sorry for the home equity line or for Europe or for the 50 million small moments of Caden first and me as an afterthought. But he said sorry for the talking, and coming from my father, who did not apologize easily. That was something. I said thank you. I said I appreciated him calling. He said, I want you to know we're proud of you. Your mother is too. He stopped. I know, I said. It's okay, Dad. It wasn't entirely okay, but I meant it in the way of, I'm not going to make you say the rest of it. I know the rest of it. We talked for an hour. It wasn't a breakthrough the way they show in movies, with crying and revelation and everyone hugging by the end. It was just 2 people being honest with each other at a low volume, which was more than we'd managed in years. He told me my brother was doing better, new job, new apartment, seemed more settled. I was glad, and I meant that too. Caden's chaos had never been malicious. He was a person who'd been wrapped in cotton wool for 30 years and had never quite learned how to fall. I told my father about the job, actually told him, this time, the details and what it meant to me and what I was building. He asked questions, real ones. He said he'd like to see my new apartment sometime. I said I'd like that. A month later, I sent the letter, not the whole document. I edited it down, kept the important parts, removed the things that were more for me than for anyone else to read. I sent it to my mother. Just to her. No CC, no forwarding request, no ask that she share it with anyone. I wrote that I wasn't angry, and that was true by then. I wrote that I needed her to understand some things that I'd been carrying for a long time and that I wasn't carrying them anymore, but I wanted her to know they'd existed. The graduation. What I'd seen on the laptop, I told her I'd seen it. The years of being the functional one in a way that had made me functionally invisible. I told her I was building a life I was proud of and that I wanted her in it, but that it would have to be honestly. Not as the difficult daughter who'd gotten selfish and moved away, as myself, as I actually was. She didn't respond for 3 weeks. When she did, it was a short email. She said she'd read it several times. She said some of it was hard to read and some of it she didn't agree with. She said she was sorry I'd felt invisible. Mult was invisible. but I'd learned by then to hear what was in the words, not just what wasn't. She asked if she could call. I said yes. The call lasted almost 2 hours. She cried. I didn't, mostly, because I'd already done that part alone in my apartment on various Tuesday nights over the past couple years. She said things that were true and things that were half true and things that were the way she'd always seen it, which wasn't the way I'd seen it, and maybe both things could be real. She didn't apologize for the graduation, but she said, I think we leaned on you too much. I think we took you for granted because you always seemed to be okay. And I said, I was always okay because I knew no one was coming to check. She was quiet for a while after that. Then she said, I'm going to try to be better. I said I believed her. And I meant something by it. Not that I was certain, not that everything was resolved, but that I was willing to hold space for it. That I wasn't writing her off. That the door was open if she wanted to come through it honestly. 6 months into my new job, I got a review that used the phrase transformative leadership twice, and exceptional clinical judgment once. My team sent me a plant for my office, a peace lily in a terracotta pot with a card signed by everyone. One of the nurses had written, "Glad you're our boss," in handwriting that was slightly illegible from enthusiasm, and I put that card on my desk where I could see it. My aunt drove up for a long weekend in the spring. We went to a farmer's market and a coffee shop, and she slept on my pull-out couch and complained about it cheerfully. On the last morning, she sat at my kitchen table while I made eggs, and she said, without me having asked, "You look different." I asked what she meant. "Less braced," she said. "Like you stopped waiting for something." I thought about that while the eggs cooked. I thought about the parking lot, the graduation gown, the laptop screen, the word selfish deployed against 11 days of building my own life. I thought about my father's Tuesday phone call, my mother's 2-hour conversation, the peace lily on my desk, the slightly illegible handwriting. "I think I stopped waiting for permission," I said. My aunt made a sound that was either agreement or the beginning of a laugh. "That took long enough," she said. She wasn't wrong. There's a version of this story where I became bitter, where the unfairness calcified into something hard and permanent that I carried into every room. I was close to that version for a while. I could feel the shape of it, but I think what happened instead was that I got far enough away to see clearly. Not to stop loving my family. I do love them imperfectly and honestly the way you love people who were your whole world before you understood that you could build a world of your own, but far enough to stop arranging my life around their comfort and calling it devotion. My mother calls more regularly now. She asks about work. She asked for the name of the plant I have on my desk. Said she was thinking of getting one. My father is planning a visit in the fall. He's never been to this part of the country. He said he wants to see the hospital. Caden texted me last month, first time he'd reached out directly in a while, to say congratulations, that he'd heard about my promotion, that he was proud of me. I stared at that text for a long time, then I wrote back, "Thank you, that means a lot," and I meant it. Because I'm not waiting anymore for the version of them I always needed. I'm taking the version that's actually here, the flawed and trying and sometimes failing version, and I'm deciding over and over what I want to do with it. That's not a Hollywood ending. No one showed up at the right moment. No one gave a speech. No hidden account was revealed. No villain was escorted out. Just time and distance, and finally telling the truth. And people, slowly, imperfectly, trying to hear it. The peace lily on my desk is thriving, for what it's worth. Apparently it likes low light and just a little bit of water. I think about that sometimes. What things can grow in, when you finally give them the right conditions.